Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm so pumped for today's deep dive. We're going to be tackling a question that's been on my mind a lot lately.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
Well, we hear a lot about this idea of, educating for eternity.
Right.
But what does that really mean? Like, especially in today's world, which feels, well, a little less than eternal sometimes.
Yeah, I feel you. It's a big question for sure.
So to help us unpack that, we're going straight to the source. We're diving deep into the heart of Seventh-day Adventist education.
Sounds like a plan.
And get this, we're going to uncover something called the blueprint.
The blueprint.
Yeah, think of it like this hidden code or like a recipe for how Adventist schools were meant to work.
Okay, I'm intrigued. And where did this blueprint come from?
That's the thing, and this is what I find so fascinating, the term the blueprint. It didn't actually come from Ellen G. White.
Oh, really?
Nope. But even though it wasn't her phrase, her writings, they really shaped this whole philosophy. It's like...
Like a nickname that stuck.
Exactly. A nickname that stuck. So if we were to break down this recipe, this blueprint, what are we talking about here? What are the core ingredients?
Well, imagine this. You've got spiritual growth, character development. That's your foundation.
Okay. Solid ground to start on.
Right. Then you sprinkle in some practical skills, manual labor, that kind of thing.
That's your hands dirty.
Exactly. Fold in a healthy lifestyle. And to top it all off, academic excellence.
Okay, so we're not skipping on the academics.
Absolutely not. But here's the key. It's all seasoned generously with, you guessed it, biblical principles.
So it's about educating the whole person, not just the mind.
100%. Mind, body, and spirit. That's the Adventist education difference.
And speaking of seeing this blueprint in action, there's one place that always comes to mind, right?
Yeah.
Madison College. It's like stepping back in time to the early 1900s.
Oh, absolutely. Founded in 1904, Madison College, it was like a living, breathing example of the blueprint in action. Remember those ingredients we talked about? Well, at Madison, they weren't just ideas on paper. They were woven into the very fabric of the school.
What do you mean?
I mean, agriculture, it wasn't just a subject in a textbook. It was a way of life. Students learned by doing, working the land, growing their own food. They even built some of the college facilities themselves.
Wow. Talk about hands-on learning.
Right. You can practically hear the clang of the hammer, smell that freshly turned soil, can't you?
I can almost taste the vegetables.
Right.
But here's where things get really interesting, maybe even a little concerning. What happened as time marched on? Did this blueprint, did it stand the test of time?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And to really dig into that, we need to look at the shifts that happened within Adventist education as we move through the 20th century. Because, you see, cracks, they started to appear in this seemingly solid foundation.
Okay, so what caused those cracks? Was it just like time taking its toll? Or were there other factors at play here?
Well, it's a bit of both, really. Author Vance Farrell,
Okay.
he makes a really interesting point in his book, The Broken Blueprint. He talks about how, as Adventist education moved further into the 20th century, it started to drift from those rural agrarian roots. And as more and more Adventist schools were popping up in urban settings,
Right.
that inherent connection to the land, it started to fade.
Yeah, you can't exactly have a working farm on every campus, especially if you're in the middle of a city, right?
Exactly. And as that shift happened, those practical hands-on skills that were so central to the Madison College experience, they kind of started to take a back seat.
Interesting.
And we can't forget about the elephant in the room, right? The rising cost of education.
Right.
I mean, remember how those students at Madison College, they could work their way through school?
Yeah,
That's a distant dream for a lot of people these days.
for sure. It's like the recipe got tweaked along the way.
Yeah. Some ingredients emphasized, others kind of fading into the background. But you've got to admit, the world has changed a lot since 1904.
Oh, tell me about it.
We live in a digital age, right?
Oh.
It's all smartphones and silicon, not just shovels and soil.
Absolutely. The landscape of education, the world in general, it's vastly different today.
Right.
But that begs the question, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do we take these timeless principles, these core ingredients of the blueprint, and how do we adapt them for a generation that's honestly more familiar with a keyboard than a plow?
Yeah. That's the million-dollar question right there.
It is. And educator Floyd Greenleaf, he really hits on this. He's like, look, we've got to extract those enduring principles. We've got to translate them for the 21st century.
Okay, where do we even begin with that? I mean, how do we bridge that gap, between a blueprint that's seemingly so rooted in manual labor and a world that's practically swimming in technology.
Well, that's where it gets really exciting. Think about this. Entrepreneurship, innovation, critical thinking.
Oh, these are all facets of God's character, wouldn't you say?
I mean, I see where you're going with this.
Right.
It's about empowering students to be creators, problem solvers, agents of change in their communities, in the world, skills that transcend any particular era or technology.
Precisely. It's about nurturing that ingenuity, adaptability, that spark of divine creativity that allows them to not just navigate the world as it is, but to imagine and create the world as it should be.
Wow.
And we can't forget about digital literacy in all of this, right?
Tell me about it. It's like we're bombarded with information these days. It's overwhelming. How do we even equip this generation to sift through all that noise, to find truth?
That's where critical thinking is so crucial. It's about being able to discern truth from falsehood, being able to navigate the digital landscape without losing sight of that moral compass, those core values that are at the very heart of Adventist education.
It's like we're talking about like a digital discipleship, right?
Exactly.
Where faith and technology meet.
Yes. And we can't overlook, in this digital age, that emphasis on holistic health. I mean, that was woven into the fabric of the original blueprint.
Right.
But think about it. Balancing that screen time with physical activity, nurturing mental and emotional well-being. These are things that are just as crucial as ever, maybe even more so now.
It's like, how do we find that balance between like the digital and the physical, the practical and the spiritual?
Right, exactly. And, that's what the blueprint was always meant to be about. It wasn't, just about churning out farmers and carpenters, although honestly, those skills still incredibly valuable today.
Right.
But it was about equipping students to be well-rounded, grounded in their faith, prepared to serve God, serve their communities, no matter what challenges came their way.
It's like giving them a compass that points them not just to true north, but to a life of purpose, of meaning.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And really, that's the essence of what it means to truly educate for eternity, isn't it?
You've given us a lot to think about today. What about you, listener? What's sticking with you? I know, I'm feeling inspired to dust off my own personal blueprint for life.
Yeah.
See how I can maybe integrate some of these principles into my own journey.
I love that. And that's the beauty of this conversation, right? It's an ongoing invitation to learn, to grow. The world might look radically different than it did back in, the days of Madison College.
No.
But those core principles, those values rooted in faith and service, they're as relevant as ever.
So true. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the blueprint of Adventist education. It's been quite a journey. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking those tough questions, and keep seeking those timeless truths that equip us to live lives of purpose and impact.